everyone, and welcome to Sunup. I'm Lyndall Stout. As we move into fall, now is the time for landowners to start thinking about wildfire season and getting prepared. We begin today with Sunup's Ed Barron and our OSU Extension fire ecologist, John Weir.
You know, we never know what the weather's going to be this winter and this spring, how dry it's going to be or whatever, but what we do know is we have the fuel built up for this year. We've in most of the states been wet, maybe above average, some areas a little bit below, but we've got a lot of fuel accumulation, and so that will translate into some pretty good wildfire conditions if the weather conditions match up with the fuel loads.
So what should people be doing to prepare for the spring fire season?
So again, you know, when the fire is bearing down on your property and stuff, that's not the time to be thinking about, I need to get ready, I need to prepare something for the fire, for a wildfire. We need to do it well in advance, just like everything else. Going out and mowing strips down around buildings, around places we store equipment, things like that, to reduce that fuel load so it's not burning really hot right next to those structures, that equipment and things like that. We can get that fire back, also make it easier if a fire department is there, they can knock it down, make it safer for them to pull vehicles in, you know, being able to see. That's the thing to think about hay storage. Where am I storing my hay? You know, a lot of people are putting up hay, stacking hay up for things. Again, you know, kind of the deal, don't put all your eggs in one basket, don't store all your hay in one spot, you know, spread that stuff out so in case something does happen, you don't lose the whole load there. Put them in areas that there's very little fuel, sacrifice areas, put them in areas, you know, stack them on bare ground areas. Don't take a lot of work to get prepared, and it's a whole lot easier to do now than when you're trying to put yourself in between your property and the fire coming. That's not the place you want to be whenever those kind of conditions are going on. That is very unsafe. So do it now, you know, a little bit of prep.
So in addition to cutting and tilling, is prescription burning a good solution right now?
Yeah, again, using fire to fight fire with. So again, we can go in, burn around areas, you know, that may be kind of a problematic areas. Burning right now is great. As long as you got adequate old growth fuel, it'll burn, it'll carry really good and get things burned down. And so you create blackened areas where, you know, buffers against that fire coming in. That would be a great place for, just like I said, storing hay. You know, you can burn out an area where your hay is going to go. And again, it's not going to really grow back a lot. You're going to get growth back, but it's still going to be a whole lot less. And again, you can wait a little bit later, even into the fall, to burn so you get less growth. There's several communities in the Texas Panhandle that are doing burning around their towns and stuff to protect them, you know, in the fall, doing those kind of burns and stuff to create blackened areas to keep their town and the community safe. So that's a good thing to do.
And then you have some fact sheets available for people if they're interested.
Yeah, we've got fact sheets on preparing farm and ranch for wildfire. Really great resource, talks all about that, about all the things that you ought to think about preparing for, not only insurance-wise, you know, prepping around buildings, prepping around your home, but also what to do in case that fire's coming, you know, and having a plan, having an evacuation plan and a livestock evacuation plan so we can try to keep ourselves out of danger and out of harm's way and protect all that stuff that we've worked hard to accumulate.
All right, thank you very much, John Weir, fire ecologist here at Oklahoma State University. And if you'd like more information on those fact sheets, go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
Hi, Wes Lee here with the weekly Mesonet Weather Report. Mid-September is when wheat for forage normally starts getting drilled in the ground. This year, the high soil temperatures may be a hindrance to that. Here is the 3-day average 4-inch temperatures from midweek on bare soil. Today's shorter coleoptile wheat varieties germinate best at temperatures much cooler than we currently have. Since mid-August, we have experienced much warmer than normal air temperatures. This is illustrated on this statewide average high temperature graph. We have only come close to the normal high 2 days during the past 2 weeks, and we have a while longer to deal with this heat wave. This map is the expected high temperatures on Saturday. You can see hundreds at most of the western sites. The normal statewide average high temperature for September the 11th should be around 85 degrees. Therefore, the expected highs we could see this weekend will be about 15 degrees above normal for this time of year. The forecast from the National Weather Service for next week has us staying above normal with temperatures. Temperatures are expected to drop dramatically with a cool front about midweek. However, they have a long way to drop to get us back to normal and cool soils down enough to get good wheat germination rates. Gary is up next with some limited rainfall information.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Well, drought continues to be the main concern we have as we transition from summer to fall. Some folks have had some pretty good rains and are not in any sort of trouble, but others are starting to see a little bit more dryness creep in. Let's get straight to the new drought monitor map and see what we have. Well, as far as strict drought goes, we do have that area of moderate drought up in the far northwestern main body of the state and also out in the western panhandle. And that little sliver of severe drought up in Woods and Harper County in far northwestern Oklahoma. But we see a lot more of that yellow abnormally dry conditions, D0 designation on the map. The little spots of yellow are starting to multiply. These areas of abnormally dry conditions signify areas that could be going into drought conditions if they don't see significant rainfall in the next couple of weeks. So just something to keep in mind. Not a lot more drought, but a lot more areas in danger of going into drought. The culprit is this flash drought situation we're seeing over the last 30 to 60 days. We'll take a look at the 30-day Mesonet rainfall map across the state. We have some pretty good amounts in far southeastern Oklahoma, but lots and lots of that light green and blue color, and they're scattered about the state, and that's where we get the scattered areas of abnormally dry conditions. But it really shows up well when we start to look at the departure from normal rainfall map for the last 30 days from the Oklahoma Mesonet. We see lots of deficits of 1 to 2 to even greater than 3 inches of rain. So again, areas to watch out for as we go into the next couple of weeks. Now, September is a wet month for most of the state, so it's really going to be key that we get some normal rainfall amounts, if not above normal rainfall amounts, to start to curtail this dry stretch we're having. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
It's hard to believe it's that time that producers are going to be planning for dual-purpose wheat grazing, but Paul, there's probably going to be some challenges for dual-purpose this season.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We've got a tremendous insect pressure. There's a lot of grasshoppers. We've had lots and lots of generations of armyworms, it seems like, this year. So the fall armyworms is going to be a very big issue. And when we're looking at planting wheat, if we get started, the 1st of September for graze out wheat, we can expect about 2,000 pounds of fall forage production. When we look at our ideal time for dual purpose wheat, we're looking at mid-September, between the 10th and the 15th of September, and that'll cut back our fall forage yield by about 25%. Actually, for every day after the 1st of September you delay your planting, it's going to cost you about 35 pounds of fall forage production. So that's not a tremendous loss. 1,500 pounds of fall forage production is really, it's acceptable. We've got a lot of producers that have decided to delay until that mid-September time frame because of all the insect pressure that we're going to have. And there's also been some talk about shortages of the materials we use to control the armyworms. So, there's a lot of problems associated with that's going to cut back on our fall forage production at a time whenever grain prices are going up and are fairly expensive. There's been areas where armyworms and grasshoppers have really severely impacted yields in Sudan and sorghums, and as well as Bermuda grass and crabgrass. So, there's been, whenever we get those really big, nearly mature armyworms, and at high populations, you'll go check a hayfield and it looks fine, almost ready to cut, and then you go back out and what happened to my hay crop? It's all gone. And those armyworms can really consume a lot of that forage that you're trying to put up for hay really quickly. So, there has been a lot of fields in Oklahoma that have been impacted by those pests.
What are some other options that producers have, getting closer into the late fall, early winter type situation?
As an emergency forage crop, We've had a lot of luck, good luck planting oats for some early fall, early winter pasture. It freezes out if it gets really cold into December and January, but it will fill that gap. Other options that should be considered would be looking at triticale, which is a hybrid between wheat and rye, or just regular cereal rye. If we're looking at fall forage production only, triticale and cereal rye are two very good forage producers because they grow at so much colder temperatures and so much more forage production than wheat.
So it just seems like, the takeaway from this, there's a lot of things that producers need to consider in these next just few weeks.
Yes, there's a lot of give and take on ideal planting time for wheat and other cool season annuals to get the fall forage production that we're going to need if we're short on hay, or to take care of some grain supplementation if we don't want to buy expensive supplements. And then, your give and take is, how do we control the pests and what timing for those pests? So there's a lot that goes into the planning, having everything ready and doing the best management you can to get as much forage production as you can. Get your fertilizer right. Timing is only part of the puzzle. So, if we get our fertility right, seeding depth, quality seed, there's a lot that can go in, and just advanced planning will really help you in that.
Yeah, and we'll check back in with you to see how the situation's unfolding, Paul.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Paul. Paul Beck, Extension Beef Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Good morning, Oklahoma. Welcome to Cow-Calf Corner on Sunup. Our topic this week is going to be on supplementing cows that are grazing dormant pastures or dormant warm season grass. And there's a huge variety of feedstuffs that can work in the diets of beef cattle and in beef production. We look at what's going on right now. On September 30th of this year, there's going to be about 3 million acres on a national basis that's been enrolled in the Conservation Reserve Program that's going to come out of contract. Of the different options that we have for that pasture or land, one of them is to return it to grazing, and it would be native grass plants that were established at the beginning of that CRP contract that we'd have available to us as a forage resource. And in other cases, just native range that we have grown this year and set aside that once it goes dormant later on this fall, we could use to graze cows. So when we think about these type of grasses, we typically get into a situation where some supplementation is going to be necessary to us. There's basically a 4-step process that we go through. Step number 1, let's take a look at those cows, figure out what stage of production they're at, and figure out what their nutritional requirements are at this present stage. Second step is to actually look at that forage that we've got available to us and come up with the best estimate we can of what kind of nutrition that's going to provide to a cow. That's going to involve several things. One, how much of it is a cow going to eat? And this is influenced by things like just the quality of that available forage. If it's a better quality, green, lush growing grass, she's going to want to eat more of it each day than if we're talking about dormant native grass pasture or corn stalks or straw or something like that, where intake's going to be less. Second part of that equation is what nutrition is available in that forage. And so by looking at those two things together, how much of it is she going to eat and what is the nutrient content of that forage out there, we can gauge what her daily intake is going to be. Third thing we take a look at is just the addition or the subtraction of one versus the other. If we know what the cow needs to consume and we've got a good idea what that forage is going to provide, if there's a difference, we're going to need to make supplementation. If we figure that that cow is actually meeting her nutritional requirements from that available forage, no supplementation is actually necessary. Fourth step of this process is now to actually look at feedstuff alternatives and what we may want to supplement with in order to meet those protein, energy, and possible vitamin and mineral requirements there. So the nice thing about this is we've got some resources available through OSU. We've got our calculator program where you can plug your cow size or stage of production, what kind of standing forage you're looking at actually is. We basically want to prioritize supplementing that cow according to protein, according to energy secondary to that. Why do we prioritize protein over energy? We got ample studies that show that given adequate protein supplementation, cattle can utilize a lower quality type of forage and actually meet their energy requirements out of it along the way as well. So let's think about crude protein number one, meeting energy requirements. Secondary to that, vitamin and mineral supplementation as the final thing that we take into consideration when we're looking at supplementing cows grazing dormant native prairie plants. Thanks for joining us this week on Cow-Calf Corner.
Well, the markets were really quite resilient last year in 2020. They began with a lot of uncertainty due to the COVID pandemic, and that did provide some pressure on those land markets at the first part of 2020. But the markets did a nice job of rebounding from that, and they ended the year on a pretty strong note. And those were due to several factors, one of which had to do with higher commodity prices. And then we had some federal stimulus monies available to production agriculture. And then we have some low interest rates, and that makes financing land purchases much more affordable. Land values are influenced a great deal by potential earnings. And then we think about, well, what influences earnings? And of course that has to do with commodity prices and those income numbers, but also it's influenced by input cost. And so it really kind of depends on what sector of agriculture you might be in, but inflation has played a role in impacting those operating margins going forward. According to some land value and market reports by the Kansas City Fed and also USDA NASS, their reports have shown some strong performance in the markets of 7, 8, 10% across the board. And really, as long as prices stay high and those expectations continue for higher prices, or at least high prices, higher than where we've been in the past, and then those low interest rates, I think a lot of that enthusiasm and optimism will be bid into those markets, and that strength will continue into the foreseeable future. We have a website available at OSU that has to do with land values and the land markets here in Oklahoma. And it's been revised and updated with a new appearance, and so hopefully the public will find that as a very useful source of go-to information on those land markets in Oklahoma. Hopefully the folks out there will find that information very useful and be able to make some better choices in regards to the land transfer markets in Oklahoma.
Now a word from Dr. Cheryl DeVuyst, inviting you to the upcoming Rural Economic Outlook Conference.
Well, we are happy to once again have people coming on campus for the Rural Economic Outlook Conference. We didn't get to have this in person last year, and now we have a great lineup of speakers and faculty to help others understand what is going on in our agricultural economy and what we can look forward to in the future. October 13th is when the conference will be held, and it will be in the OSU Alumni Center. We have a couple of great keynote speakers. We also have our AgriCon faculty who will be giving you updates on what's happening in grain marketing, livestock marketing, actually some of the new innovations that we have in rural broadband in our state, and also in working with small processors, meat processors who have started their businesses during the pandemic. The producers in Oklahoma are always looking for more information. Our faculty have done a lot of research and have gathered information on the facts going forward on what people can expect. It is great for people to come together and network, share experiences, and then learn what our OSU Extension faculty in agricultural economics are doing to make sure that we are moving forward in a positive way over the next year. For more information and registration, you can go to sunup.okstate.edu. We look forward to seeing you.
Dr. Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist, is here now. Kim, let's start things off with a look at what's going on around the world with the wheat markets.
Well, when you're talking about the world, most everybody goes to the Black Sea area. You've got Russia. They've been in the news a lot about their production. You know, it's 3.1 billion bushels at one time. It's down to 2.66 on USDA's August report. Comes out, the last number I saw was about 2.75 billion bushels. Ukraine, near record crop. But if you look at the Black Sea area, last year they produced about 4.6 billion bushels, 4.3 billion bushels. So that's down, and that's good for prices. European Union, big crop, 5.1 billion bushels, but they got rain on it, so their test weight, 39% of it's projected to be below the minimum level of test weight for your flour milling materials. However, it still could be a good flour milling crop, just low test weight. You look at Australia, 1.1 plus billion bushels. Their average for 5 years is 882 million. Big crop there, not record, but close to it. And a record world crop, 28.5 billion bushels. So we've got a lot of wheat. I don't think it's in the right position. And our ending stocks are projected to go down because of relatively good demand.
How about the corn market in terms of the world picture?
Well, if you look at the corn market, a big U.S. crop, 14.8 billion bushels compared to 14.2 last year. I think the news is coming from Brazil and from Ukraine. Brazil, 4.6 billion bushels compared to 3.4 last year. Ukraine, 1.5 billion bushels compared to 1.2. Brazil and Argentina and Ukraine together, 8.2 billion bushels compared to 6.5 last year. Ukraine's going to take care of North Africa, and Asia market competes strong there. Brazil, they compete around the world about the same as us. A lot of competition in the corn market there.
And then last but not least, how are soybeans looking in terms of world markets?
Well, tight stocks is still projected to stay tight, even though we're projected to have a 14.1 billion bushel record soybean crop. Brazil and Argentina together, 7.2 billion bushels compared to 6.7 last year. And you can't talk about soybeans without China, and China's going to go to Brazil and Argentina first.
What's happening with prices?
Well, if you look at prices, wheat stabilized around $6.70, plus or minus 20 cents in their range from about $6.60 to $6.80. Sideways pattern, I'd call that. Corn, it's got a slight downtrend. $4.95 down below $5 finally, and that's the forward contract for corn harvest delivery. It was $5.35 last week. You look at soybeans, they're down to $12, below $12 for forward contract in some areas. That's down from $12.45, and they probably got the downtrend, probably the strongest downtrend of those three.
Okay, Kim, thanks a lot. We'll see you next week.
Fall's almost here and cattle producers are transitioning over to that change. So Daryl, what are some market trends that you're seeing?
Well, you know, we've been seeing a lot of optimism building in these cattle markets for several weeks now, and I think that certainly will continue through the fall and, you know, on into next year. So, you know, we're sort of waiting for these things to, you know, sort of fully develop this fall. And the other thing, of course, that's really affecting these markets is the feed cost. And so feed grain prices are significantly higher. We're pricing that into feedlot rations, and as a result, we're pricing that into these feeder cattle markets. So, you know, those are some of the major things we're watching going forward.
How should cow-calf producers, you know, approach marketing their calves this fall?
Well, you know, we just said there's a lot of optimism in the market. So I think we're expecting generally higher prices, but there's certainly opportunities to do even better than that in terms of what the average market is. You know, weaning these calves, preconditioning these calves, now's the time to do that really because, you know we need at least 45 days and it's better. Buyers really prefer 60 or 70 days weaning. So we need to do that. And you might want to think about whether it's worth participating in a preconditioning program like our Oklahoma Quality Beef Network.
So what are the prospects for, you know, shifting over to the stocker producers out there? What are the prospects for fall and winter grazing?
Well, again, I just, the value of gain that we see right now because of those high feed prices and what feedlots are facing, they're wanting to buy bigger cattle. And so we're seeing relatively higher prices for big feeder cattle. So there's an opportunity to increase value by putting on weight. So if you're a stocker producer, buying these calves, now you may be expecting a fall low. Normally we see that seasonally, and that may not happen as much. But on the other hand, if you look at where the futures markets are right now for feeder cattle, there's some decent margin opportunities. So on a broader scale around the country, drought is still a major issue. Much of the country, the West in particular, and the northern plains face serious drought issues. We've seen elevated beef cow slaughter all summer. We know some of that was early culling, and so that may mean that a smaller number of cull cows will be coming to market this fall. They may have been already come to market.
Daryl, we were talking to Paul Beck earlier in the show, and he had mentioned, we were talking about the possibility of armyworms in those dual-purpose wheat fields and the impact that could play. So do producers have their eye, or is the market feeling out that possibility?
Well, that's increasingly been a challenge in recent years, and this year seems particularly bad. To get that early planted wheat and the maximum amount of grazing, there's always that trade-off. And so producers will have to really watch the production aspects of getting wheat pasture established, in particular threats like the armyworms and other pests. But from the economic standpoint, the incentive is there.
All right, thanks, Daryl. Dr. Daryl Peel, Livestock Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
That'll do it for us this week. A reminder, you can see us anytime on our website, sunup.okstate.edu, and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.